The top seed in both the Western and Eastern Conference now find themselves in tied series after going up 2-0. Matt, I got a very similar question for you for these NBA playoffs at this juncture. Which number one seed, the Miami Heat or the Phoenix Suns, are in more jeopardy of blowing a 2-0 lead and losing in the conference semifinal?
At least the Miami Heat, because Joel Embiid is back and he is improving in every game. You saw in Game 3, he looked like a guy that hadn't been playing in a few games. He comes back, and in Game 4, he scores 15 in the first quarter, was just absolutely dominant. Yeah. And then on top of that, James Harden actually started to get hot, had 31, shot 6 of 10 from 3, and looked like the old James Harden, the James Harden that the 76ers originally traded for because of what he would be able to do as the number 2 or second superstar on that team. Miami's been playing great, and they definitely did have a chance if Embiid was going to be hobbled in this series. But with the way that Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, James Harden, and now Joel Embiid have been playing, it's going to be really tough for the Heat to push past that, especially even when Jimmy Butler scores 40 points, they're not getting a win.
Yeah.
Game 5 is going to be very telling in Miami, and I think that's going to be the deciding factor as to who gets it, because if the Sixers win in Miami, they're not going to lose at home in Philly for Game 6.
This isn't the topic, but those 2 games in Philadelphia that the Sixers won over the Miami Heat should be a case study on why Joel Embiid should have been the MVP this year. And I understand the MVP is a regular season award, but you mentioned that Game 3 where Embiid playing with a mask on his face, first game back, after an orbital fracture, still dealing with the hand injury and the concussion. He didn't even play himself. I think he dropped 18 and 11, but he was still the most impactful player in that game. The main reason why the Sixers were able to win that game, why Danny Green all of a sudden found out how to reshoot the ball, had 7 threes in that game, and obviously Game 4 looked again like Joel Embiid. So I agree. I think the Miami Heat are certainly in trouble, especially with Joel Embiid playing this way. And again, everybody else, when Embiid's in the lineup, plays better. Maxey, you talk about Maxey, Harris, and obviously Harden. They play better when Embiid's in the lineup. So the Heat are in trouble for sure.
He's their leader.
He's their leader and arguably the most valuable player in the NBA at this point. But this is where I'm going. And this is where that I've been on this train for a little while now.
Yes.
Luka Doncic is the best player in the Western Conference playoffs still remaining. And because of that, I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to go to the NBA Finals. Listen, Luka is averaging 33, 9, and 9 in this series against the Phoenix Suns, who have one of the best defenses in the league, who are one of the best teams in the league, and I don't even think he's playing his best basketball right now. I'm talking about Luka. He's 3 of 17 from 3 over his last 2 games, which is abysmal. But the rest of his game continues to evolve and continues to lift this Dallas Mavericks team to the next level. And again, despite the poor shooting from 3 over the last 2 games, he attracts so much attention, and he is, so in control of the offense in the game when he's on the court that he makes the other dudes around him better. Very similar to what I was just talking about with Joel Embiid. Maxey Kleber is shooting 49% from deep these playoffs. Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock are both shooting better than 40% from deep this season. Not this season, this playoffs, I should say. And that's a direct, correlation to Luka Doncic, who creates open shots just about more than anybody in the NBA, creates open threes just about more than anybody in the NBA. And this is why I think, the Dallas Mavericks tied 2-2 after winning 2 games in pretty convincing fashion in Dallas, I think are going to outlast the Phoenix Suns in 7 games. And I've said all year how Jason Kidd has done a hell of a job coaching his team. The Dallas Mavericks are a defensive team. They had the second best defense in the regular season in terms of points allowed, and we're starting to see that kind of play itself out in the last 2 games after their defense in the first 2 games of that series was pretty abysmal. But this is where we're at. I think Luka, like I said at the top, I think he's the best player remaining in the Western Conference playoffs. He's obviously the best player in this series at this point. I like the Mavs in 7.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said it was 7 because I do think it's going to be very hard for them to win in Phoenix.
No doubt.
And at the end of the day, this to me, it feels like it comes down to those number 2 guys that you expect to show up at the end of the day. It's coming down to Jalen Brunson, who played very poorly in their 2 losses in Phoenix.
Yep.
And then you look at Chris Paul, arguably 2 of the worst games he's ever played in, period, in his entire career were in those losses in Dallas. So I think it's going to come down to those 2 point guards and see where they're at, because you know what you're going to get out of Booker. You know what you're going to get out of Luka. And I'm glad you pointed out that he's distributing the ball really well, because that has been absolutely unbelievable. He's finding those guys. Dallas is moving the ball so well, getting it to the open shooter, and they're drilling the shots right now. When that's happening, it's almost impossible to beat a team when they're shooting the ball like that.
Yep, and I feel like this is super, the case for the Dallas Mavericks, and you can say the same for the Philadelphia 76ers. I said as much a little bit earlier, in this episode here, but for the Mavs, if one of those other guys gets off in addition to Luka, the Mavericks are damn near hard to beat. We saw in Game 3 it was Brunson. He had 28 points or so, and saw in Game 4 it was Dorian Finney-Smith hitting 7, 8 threes. I think there's going to be a Maxey Kleber game before this series is over, and there's certainly going to be another Luka Doncic game, I believe, where he goes off for 40-plus points, 40-point triple-double damn near, and that's going to be the difference in this series. I've said it last week, had a couple people on my line about it, that Luka is arguably already one of the greatest NBA playoff performers ever. Through his first 20 playoff games, only Wilt Chamberlain and Michael Jordan have scored more points than Luka through 20 career playoff games. I mean, I think we're watching the ascension of an all-time great in Luka Doncic. And again, if he can outlast the Phoenix Suns, the reigning Western Conference champions, on a team where his second best player is Jalen Brunson, I think that says a lot. But we're going to have to see how this one plays out.
It's going to be exciting.
Two really great series between 4 teams. Tied at 2-2. Can't wait to see how this one shakes out, I should say. But let us know in the comments which number 1 seed, the Heat or the Suns, who's more likely to lose here coming up soon. But that's going to do it for us, though. We're Scott Proctor, my guy Matt Morris right here. Catch you on tomorrow's episode of Simple Questions.